Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending today. My name is Joe Woodward. I'm a volunteer for AARP, a retired state employee, and a lifelong resident of the state of Illinois. We are here to release the results of a new AARP survey with frankly shocking findings about the depth of voter anger, disillusionment, and concern over Illinois' continued fiscal crisis. Chaos. Our elected leaders left Springfield earlier this year proclaiming victory because after 2.5 years of impasse, the state finally had a budget. But nearly 3 in 4 of Illinois' registered voters say they lack confidence that Springfield's recent budget deal will reduce the state's long-term fiscal problems. And that lack of confidence is having a corrosive effect on the residents' commitment to the state. It is disturbing to acknowledge this, but we must face facts. These survey results raise questions about the viability of the future of Illinois. Illinoisans are losing faith in our shared future. Our elected state leaders must come to grips with our fiscal mess if Illinoisans are to have the future they deserve. Nearly half of those surveyed say that they have considered leaving the state in the last year. 73% said they have heard someone they know talk about leaving the state. The top 3 reasons cited for leaving the state were high taxes, government mismanagement, and the high cost of living, in that order. Voter anger is intense. When asked to rate how angry they are about the state's continued fiscal mess, with a rating of 5 representing extremely angry, 2/3 of voters ranked their anger at 4 or 5.
Thank you, Joe. I'm Lori Hendren. I'm Associate State Director for AARP Illinois, and I thank you for coming here today. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and this survey of more than 1,200 registered Illinois voters, criteria is age 25 plus, current resident of Illinois, current registered voter in Illinois, demonstrates very clearly Illinois is on the wrong path, and we've heard that before, but it's resonating today. Illinois is broken. AARP is a strong campaign called Enough is Enough, and no better enough is enough has to be called to action now. Let's talk numbers. Illinois is facing $1.2 billion deficit in its current budget, more than $7.5 billion in unpaid bills, more than $130 billion in long-term debt, and a credit rating 1 level above junk status. Now is the time to find a long-term comprehensive solution, equitable solution. These survey results reveal that no matter what someone's age, Illinois voters are simply angry at where we are in Illinois. They realize their taxes have already been risen, and no more is coming unless politicians in or coming into office put their constituents first and make the difficult political decisions needed to put Illinois on a path to restored physical health. It's time for candidates for governor and Illinois General Assembly to show voters exactly how they would put our state on a path to continued physical health. This is what Illinois voters are demanding, and they're calling for action. Fixing the state's ongoing budget crisis is the voters' top election priority, beating out jobs, health care, and crime. And the poll that you guys have with you today enumerates that out. If you've been covering polling for some time, you know how rare it is to hear about a position on an issue, any issue, that commands near unanimous support. This survey shows 97% of those surveys said that it was very or somewhat important for the governor and General Assembly to solve the state's fiscal problems, with 85% saying it is very important. No other priority mentioned by pollsters, jobs, the economy, education, healthcare, law enforcement, illegal drugs and crime, government spending, and even taxes was rated so high. This is a call to action. This survey shows that Illinois voters are more willing to compromise on solutions than elected leaders are. 57% said it would take a combination of revenue increases and spending cuts to address the state's long-term fiscal problems. Survey respondents gave the strongest support for proposals to increase state taxes on incomes above $1 million. 70% support this concept of creating a graduated income state tax. 59% support this idea. Imposing the state sales tax on dry cleaning or hair salon services. 45% support such steps. As Joe has stated, Illinois voters, citizens, were facing a fiscal crisis and a crisis to stay. If there is any good news here, it's that we have yet to vote unless you have early voted, which is good. And taken with these surveys, the research, Illinois is a clear call for candidates for state elections. Elections are how we come to grips with our problems and reach a consensus on how to solve them. Now is the time for candidates to step forward and show leadership. Tell us how you will resolve the crisis, but tell us in detail. Tell us now. And voters demand answers. Simply, enough is enough. Right now, I'd like to invite Bob Tiemann. He's the Associate State Director for In-Home Care, Adult Day, and pretty much the resounding voice for in-home care in Illinois.
Good morning. As Lori said, my name is Bob Tiemann. I'm the Executive Director for the Illinois Association of Community Care Home Care Providers and Emergency Home Response. I'm also the Executive Administrator for the Illinois Adult Day Services Association. Quite a few hats. How has this all affected us? Well, quite frankly, we have family members of our clients who are fearful as to whether or not their family members will not wind up in nursing homes because of the fiscal mismanagement over the past few years. In 2015, when the budget impasse first began, the association joined with others and filed a lawsuit against the state of Illinois, making sure that at least the Medicaid payments were paid. We won, but we had to go to court constantly to keep them paying the bills. Now that we have a budget, we have a little bit of leeway, but not much, because in the fantastic city of Chicago, the minimum wage is $12 an hour. With home care, we are paid $18.50 an hour. To that, you have to add in all the other things that go with it as well. Now, here's the clincher. In Adult Day, we are paid $9.05 an hour. Now, I ask you, how long is a business going to stay in business when you have to operate at a deficit? Okay. The problem is there, too, is that we, in Adult Day, have not asked for a rate increase in over 10 years. You know, part of that is our fault. We didn't get on the bandwagon. We are now. As far as looking for a rate increase, the same thing with the in-home care. The other things that we have, too, there are other issues in Chicago that are going on that make it a little bit more difficult to do our jobs. They're now looking at actually doing a bill that we have to tell the individuals that if we're not going to need them that day, or we have to notify them 3 days in advance, that they're not going to be needed. In home care, that doesn't work because we don't know whether a client has gone to the hospital at that point, but then we're liable to, we are liable for paying them for those days that they're not doing service, and we can't bill the state. In transportation with Adult Day, we are paid $8.75 an hour. Now, can you imagine what it's like to run those vans and the cost? And unlike other places that if the client, we go to the client's house and the client is not coming in that day and didn't tell us, we're out that money. We cannot bill the state for that trip. We just eat it. How long are organizations going to last? In the state of Illinois, over 20 adult day services have closed since 2015. Once an adult day service closes, it doesn't come back. To open an adult day costs anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000 to start it up, a new one. And we have a lack of adult day services in the state of Illinois. Why do you want to come? Why do you want to open something up where you have a deficit to start with? We lost probably 15 to 20 home care providers. And some home care providers had multiple areas that they did. For example, Lutheran Social Services closed all of their services but one. They have one in-home care left up around Chicago. That's it. Others have closed, shut their doors that have been in business for 35 to 37 years, all because of the caustic base in the state of Illinois. Will it get better? I'm positive. Yes, it will. A good indication as to what's happening is that Lori mentioned the bills that are outstanding. A lot of those are ours. A lot of those are ours, where they are in the process of trying to pay the back bills. And they still owe us interest. And they haven't even begun to process that. So legislators need to concentrate on the finances of the state. That needs to be the priority. And we need to know what the plans are. And they need to consult with individuals who know accounting and know fiscal budgeting and work it out. But as I said, I had confidence. We will survive. We have survived worse. We will survive this. But how many are left standing? That's in the state's hands. Okay.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. And I think it's a resounding message when we hear the polling results that people understand the fiscal crisis and they're angry. And that we know in the state of Illinois, we have a very strong program, the community care program, that allows individuals with age with dignity and independence in the home setting of their choice with their loved ones, their family caregivers. And this is interesting because one of the options for care is adult day services. This is a balance of someone being able to still be that family caregiver, working a full-time job, caring for their loved one. This is an option. And yet, our physical crisis has what, 20?
Over 20.
Over 20.
Close their doors.
And as we know, Illinois and across the nation, we're going to have people living longer, which is wonderful. But we also have to be able to have confidence in our physical state to be able to take care not only of today, tomorrow, and our future. So I'm open for any questions. Yes?
Well, Lori, thanks for being here. You know, the candidates and the incumbents have already failed. The incumbents got us into this mess, and the candidates won't provide specifics. The specifics you're calling for. So what's the answer?
I think the answer is a call to action. And it's interesting because when I read this poll, voters are angry. And this is telling me the candidates that are running for office, that are here, have to step up. This is a climate that we want accountability. We need accountability and details to have confidence going forward. Or as you see in the other part of the poll, people are looking where else to go, where the taxes will be lower, where they can be able to live. So yes, if you want to be an elected official, do the due diligence, do the detail, do the work, because that's what every voter, every resident in the state of Illinois deserves.
But how do we dig out of the financial morass, if you will, without everybody in this room paying more taxes? That's only going to push more people out.
Well, I think it's the decisions, the plans have to be laid out. I can't put a vote on that. Our members can't put a vote on that. But I can tell you that these elected officials are going to have to come to the table and get it done.
Did you guys poll it all in? Scanning through this, I didn't see much of it, but when it comes to like the business climate, we hear a lot of Republicans saying the business climate's horrible here. National surveys put us at the bottom of the barrel. Even the governor said, we need to increase revenue through economic growth. Was there any indication from the polling data showing that voters see this as an issue and something that needs to be addressed, or did you guys just focus on, proposed cuts or tax increases or?
No, I think that when it starts talking about fiscal problems, I would say that is what people are seeing in the climate. So we can roll through the numbers, but that's the pressures. That's the pressures that businesses are facing, like Bob talked about. That's the pressures of individuals. And so, yeah, if you go through, you can see the enumeration of where we are. It wasn't just business specific, but I think business is part of the fabric of our entire economy. And if we don't have faith, if businesses can't have faith, we have an economic challenge that we're in now, and there's got to be some strong leadership to get us forward, from people in office to people who want to be in office.
Did you ask them about politics? In other words, who do they blame, or what would they like to see as far as a solution?
We did not. It was, so we had all parties, And there was, I think if you look on page 2 of yours, you can be able to see the select issues that folks are facing, and maybe that might give a little bit of direction of what the priorities were. I'm not sure.
Is
Yeah.
it a little frustrating in this election season to see the candidates for governor be asked about concrete plans and not hearing that back? And I guess what would be those suggestions? How far do you think they can go when it comes to outlining more specifics? What specifics might you be looking for?
So I would say to this is what this poll, and what we saw last week in the poll, that there is serious anger and concern we're on the wrong path. And if you are or you want to represent constituents in Illinois and voters, it is your responsibility to lay it out. Because politics aside, we're nonpartisan, non-political, but this is what people deserve, and they need to take the action and be able to vote. I was in politics for years, and I can tell you that at the end, voters want to know, and they want to make sure you're going to follow that blueprint.
You said the same about, candidate J.B. Pritzker has talked about a progressive income tax. I don't know if you guys looked at that issue. Do you see that as a solution to fixing this fiscal crisis?
I would say this survey went through some of the thoughts of what voters would like when it came to taxation. And that's a point that candidates for office need to look at.
With that, you've got apply state income tax to all retirement, 71% oppose, increasing property taxes, 69% oppose, raise state gasoline tax, 60% oppose, all indicating that any increase in revenue from taxpayers' pockets, there's opposition, but you've got changing to a graduated income tax, actually 59% supporting. We haven't seen any actual detailed proposals from the Pritzker camp. However, we have seen, one proposal filed in the State House that didn't go anywhere, that it would increase income taxes on people making even like $30,000 a year. Do you think that indicates that people just don't know what the progressive tax is? If they're opposing tax increases across the board for even increasing it above 4.95%, where it's at right now for individuals, they seem to support a progressive income tax. Are they clear? Are voters clear on what that would actually mean?
I would say that the candidates need to define it clearly. Anytime we start talking about taxation, there is multiple facets to that, caps and that, and I think it's the due diligence of these candidates to lay out this blueprint in details. So voters know. Voters need to be educated. They deserve the facts and the details. What we're able to do here is paint the picture of where voters are today.
How many voters did you ask, and when was it asked?
Sure, so we're looking at, I knew you would ask me this, it was 1,000, how many finalized was 1,202 telephone interviews, 600 via landline telephone, 602 via cell phone, launched July 19th and closed on July 30th, all of 2018.
And that's from around the state, and you geographically balanced it?
Yes.
Can you talk a bit about the levels of opposition and support for certain cuts that you have laid out here? It's on page 7.
Yep.
Just a brief look, it kind of seems it's almost split down the middle.
Yeah.
Especially with the neither support or oppose. What does that tell you guys?
To me, is telling me that voters are looking at this, they're looking at it honestly, and these are all powerful issues for them to address. I mean, in the fiscal crisis, they're angry about, but they also know that, you're right, it's a split, but it's still part of the conversation that candidates need to look in and need to be able to answer. And if they recognize they're able to use this as a piece to say, hey, yeah, okay, we can tell healthcare is a big issue, public safety, we have to put our plan in place in a blueprint. We're getting down to the wire of what our election is. But most importantly, this tells me people want to know more, and they want to know the leadership that's going to be coming from that.
One of the principal points of Mr. Pritzker's campaign is to have a progressive income tax. That would require the voters to approve a constitutional amendment. Do you have any inkling from this survey as to whether they would be so inclined?
I can just tell you the numbers that were there of where there are their thoughts on. And I can read those numbers to you again. Hold on a second. I think there was, obviously they were not in favor of 70% opposed taxing retirement income. Nearly 6 in 10 Illinois registered voters 25 and older support or strongly support a change in the tax structure from a flat tax structure to a graduated one in a way to help solve the state's fiscal problems, with more Democrats and Republicans or independent voters supporting this change.
Does the AARP have a position on whether we should tax retirement income?
You know, we addressed that a while ago, and when we did our polling, there was a strong plurality. People do not want to have their retirement taxed.
Have you looked at if we had a progressive income tax, then we could apply a tax to higher income pensioners?
I think that all of those situations can come, all of those scenarios can be when they lay it out. And ARP is able to come and have conversations. We want to have conversations, but what comes back to this survey is we need to know the details.
The
We want
details of
the
what?
details of candidates' plans, and the voters deserve that.
So Mr. Pritzker should say at what percentages he would have his progressive income taxes?
I think every candidate, if they want to get Illinois back on track, they need to start laying it out in detail.
You've got almost, I mean, the AARP is the, American Association of Retired Persons.
We're AARP now, yes. Mhm.
You've got almost 60% here, 54 and younger, responding to the survey. It's a pretty large contingent of, millennials and people who have long careers now, wherever they're at. What does that say to you when they say they hear 75% say they hear somebody leaving the state, or somebody wants to leave the state? Or if, that I don't have the figure in
Yeah.
front of me, but those who actually say they are thinking about leaving the state, I think it was a majority, at least 50 plus. What does that say about, we think older people want to move to Florida because of the weather,
Yeah.
right? But this is like 60 some odd percent.
Oh, yeah.
Close to 60% who are 54 and younger. What does that say?
That's telling me they're angry about the physical health, the mistrust on where we're going, and there needs to be some solid leadership to get us back on track. When you're looking at individuals of that age that are seeing their future, and if they have the job opportunities here, and do we have a climate to, we heard from Bob of where the climate is for some businesses, and that is a clear indication that we need to make and define by the candidates in the General Assembly, how do we get back on track? When you're 25 and you start looking elsewhere, that's an outward migration. That's a potential.
I'm sorry, I just interviewed the head of Truth in Accounting,
Yeah.
and one of her points is how much government is not transparent and hides the amount of debt per citizen in Chicago.
Yeah.
When you add up all the pensions, not just of the state, but of the city and the other things that those taxpayers are on the hook for, it's $126,000 per taxpayer, which to me is just an impossible
Yeah.
number. Do you find or sense from your survey that people are aware of the severity of the fiscal crisis that this state faces?
I think that was an interesting question, because there is a part in this poll, I think, that when someone was being talked to, when they were laid out where we are,
Can you close it?
I think when people saw and was laid out where we are, they have increased frustration and almost anger about that, because now we're realizing maybe even what was passed is not going to get us there. You hear the numbers of our unpaid bills, and even more when you talk about, other elements going on. It's a mounting challenge of, can my future be here? Can my family's future? Can my business future? And that's why we're calling on all voters to press for details, press for the blueprint. Because if the leadership is needed, whether you're here or you want to be, voters deserve the details.
Following up on that question, when you were doing the survey, did you find that people were educated and aware that we have fiscal issues, or were the questions framed in a way where you brought awareness to them, telling them, hey, you should be angry about this?
No, I don't think it was that. It wasn't, like, still angry after learning more. Okay, you look on page 9, still angry after learning more about the state's physical problems as possible solutions. 36% said extremely angry. And it's just enumerating them out. Yeah.
Talking with lawmakers on both sides and having, asked questions about what's it going to take.
Yeah.
What's
What's
the tipping point? Is it going to be, junk bond status? Is it going to be a 5th or 6th or 7th or 10th year of leaving the country and outbound migration? Does AARP have a prescribed guess, list of fixes that you guys are backing and having, your members take a look at, in a way, try to get lawmakers on board with?
That's interesting. So we have mounted for 2 years, it's called the Enough is Enough campaign. If you actually Google Enough is Enough AARP Illinois, we have spent the past 2 years traveling the state, co-hosted with NPR and state budget panels, listening to folks and hearing what they have to say. And we are putting that emphasis on the lawmakers to drive the solutions. Which the unique part about this survey is it's resonating the message. And, ARP is advocates, we're lobbyists here as well, and we're proud of what we do to fight and advocate for the 50-plus population. But I think the survey is kind of telling where people are wanting some momentum. But, you travel the state every 2 weeks. We go to Moline, to Springfield, to downstate, to Chicago. Tonight, we'll have a state budget forum at NPR in Illinois with some panelists talking about where we are and the solutions that they can put forward. I think sometimes we all have to take a pause and listen, actively listen to what residents and voters and businesses are facing. And from that, we can derive real solutions. It may not be easy, but we got to put our state back on track.
And this is one of 3 press conferences that are happening simultaneously?
Yes, simultaneously, yes. So we're doing one in the Metro East and we're doing one up in Chicago. Yeah.
And all the same messages essentially?
Same messages, same release. Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it all. Please, my card is in there if you have any direct questions. Bob and Joe or any of our team is available if you want one-on-one interviews. Thank you.